Welcome to Accommodate This. In March 2025, RFK Jr., the Health Secretary of the United States, appointed David Geier to head a study to investigate the link between childhood vaccines and autism. Now, David Geier is the son of Mark Geier, and together they performed faulty research and, like RFK Jr., they've spread this thoroughly debunked conspiracy theory for decades. But who are the Geiers? Why was David Geier chosen to lead this research? And what qualifications does he actually have? Those questions and more are what I want to discuss today. And now that you know why we're here, let's get into the topic for this video, Mark and David Geier. Now, at this point in time, several videos have already been published about David Geier and RFK Jr. and their plan to research the causes of autism. But in this video, I'm going to go into some great detail about David Geier, but that's about it. There are several other videos available from other autistic content creators that may be worth watching to get a fuller picture. For example, I recommend watching the video by Autistic AF. It's called "These Men Politicizing Autism Are Not Okay." I've linked to his video in the description below. It's fantastic and goes into great detail about how men like David Geier and RFK Jr. are currently waging war against the autistic community. Check it out after watching this video. Now, in order to understand David Geier, we have to look at his father, Mark Geier. These two men were basically cut from the same cloth. Mark Geier was a physician who worked at the Laboratory of General and Comparative Biochemistry in the NIH, and he did this work during the 1970s and 1980s. Specifically, he was a student researcher between 1969 to 1970, a research geneticist in 1971 to 1973, a staff fellow in 1973 to 1974. Then he joined the professional staff 1974 to 1978 and was a guest worker 1980 to 1982. He examined vaccine safety issues since then until his death in March 2025. Now, he's been criticized by scientists, scientific institutions, and judges who have called his body of work as tainted by faulty methodology. Mark Geier promoted himself as a professional witness in more than 90 court cases related to injuries and illnesses supposedly caused by vaccines, including the thoroughly debunked conspiracy theory about vaccines causing autism. And his claim as an expert witness was questioned in 10 court cases. One judge ruled in 2003 that Mark Geier was claiming to be an expert in areas for which he has no training, expertise, and experience. Other judges have labeled his testimony as intellectually dishonest, not reliable, and wholly unqualified, with one judge saying he may be clever, but he's not credible. Both Mark and David published several articles speculating there was a link between autism and vaccines containing thimerosal, a compound made from organic mercury that used to be widely used as a preservative in the medical industry until about the 1990s. As a result, they were granted access to the vaccine safety data link records for analysis of their datasets. However, they were found to have conducted unapproved analysis on both the first and second visits to the facility. And before leaving, researchers renamed several files for removal, which were not allowed to be removed. Basically, these were violations of confidentiality rules that could have increased the risk of data breach had they not been discovered. Additionally, the American Academy of Pediatrics criticized their claims and the supporting study as containing numerous conceptual and scientific flaws, omissions of fact, inaccuracies, and misstatements. Reading some of his work myself brought the name Oswald Bates to mind.
We must internalize the flatulation of the matter by transmitting the effervescence of the Indonesian proximity in order to further segregate the crux of my venereal infection.
Now, this is important because they plan to have a registry for autistic people, and there's much concern about that data getting shared with the wrong people. And if they're using the Geiers, that is a very real probability. The Geiers also developed a treatment protocol for autism using the drug Lupron, which acts as a chemical castration. Mark called it the miracle drug, and he and his son marketed its use across the nation. They patented the protocol for Lupron in combination with chelation therapy, which is a medical technique used to remove harmful metals from the bloodstream by chemically binding to the metal and then forming a complex that can be excreted through the kidneys. Now, their hypothesis was a convoluted mess of jumbled medical terms that the Institute of Medicine reviewed and called seriously flawed, uninterpretable, and marred by incorrect use of scientific terms. According to expert pediatric endocrinologist, the Lupron protocol for autism is supported only by junk science. Abbott Laboratories, the company that produces Lupron, stopped working with the Geiers, citing the non-existence of scientific evidence to justify further research. In January 2007, the Geiers wrote a paper that claimed their experiments with autistic children performed at their business address were approved by the Institutional Review Board, or IRB. However, that paper was retracted by the journal Autoimmunity Reviews. New Scientist magazine reported that Mark's wife, Anne, his son, David, a business partner, and a plaintiff's lawyer involved in vaccine litigation were also involved in the experiments that the Maryland State Board of Physicians said did not meet the requirements of state or federal law, and referred to it as a sham IRB. When treating an autistic child, the Geiers ordered several dozen lab tests costing $12,000, and if any one of them resulted in an abnormal result, that's the one they used. The Geiers used the results from that one test to justify Lupron treatments at 10 times the daily dose ordinarily used to treat precocious puberty. It didn't matter what the other test results said. Then they'd charge $5,000 to $6,000 per month for the therapy, recommending children start a treatment as young as possible, and claiming some needed treatment to continue through adulthood. Never once did they mention that the medication was not approved safe in the United States. Now, this is important because Lupron acts as a chemical castration, preventing people from being able to procreate or pass along their genes. And that was the goal of the Geiers. In 10 separate federal cases for parents seeking compensation from the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program for alleged vaccine injuries to their children, Mark's opinion testimony has either been excluded or determined to be beyond his expertise. In a 2010 decision, the presiding legal authority wrote, "In summary, I conclude that all of the Geier epidemiological studies are not reliable and cannot be accorded any weight." On April 27, 2011, the Maryland State Board of Physicians suspended Mark Geier's medical license as an emergency action, saying he endangers autistic children and exploits their parents by administering to the children a treatment protocol that has a known substantial risk of serious harm and which is neither consistent with evidence-based medicine nor generally accepted in the relevant scientific community. The board ruled that Geier misdiagnosed patients, diagnosed patients without sufficient tests, and recommended risky treatments without fully explaining the risks to the parents. They also ruled that he misrepresented his credentials, including during an interview with the board. Geier's lawyer, Joseph A. Schwartz III, said the basis of the complaint was a bona fide dispute over therapy, and hoped for a fair hearing to challenge the board's accusations. The suspension was reaffirmed in May 2011 and upheld in appeal in March 2012 after a full evidentiary hearing before the Office of Administrative Hearings in Maryland. Mark Geier's licenses to practice medicine in the states of Washington, Virginia, and California were suspended as well. Then, in 2011, going back a little bit, David Geier was also charged by the Maryland State Board of Physicians with practicing as a licensed physician when he only had a Bachelor of Arts degree in biology. It cites that he was employed at his father's clinical practice, the Genetic Centers of America, to evaluate and treat hundreds of autistic patients, neurodevelopmental disorders, and chronic diseases. He and his father also founded multiple companies in several states that were operated and run from their home address. These companies include ASD Centers LLC, which is involved in evaluation and treatment of hundreds of autistics and people with other neurological disorders; MedCon Inc., which involves medical legal consulting and biochemical epidemiological research; Institute of Chronic Illnesses Inc., which is dedicated to studying chronic diseases; and CoMed Inc., which advocates for those adversely impacted by environmental and medicinal toxins. RFK Jr. announced on April 16, 2025, that the study David Geier was intended to lead was looking for environmental and medicinal toxins. I tried to find information on those 4 companies that they founded, but they don't appear to have a web presence. The only exception was ASD Centers LLC, which has an active Facebook page. And I'm not sure what that means. Perhaps it means they used to have sites that were then taken down. I hope that's the case. However, it's concerning there is still a Facebook page for the ASD Centers LLC with hundreds of followers. It's concerning this fraudulent company still has a presence and followers to this day. Now, in June 2012, Mark Geier was charged with violation of the Maryland suspension by continuing to practice medicine without a license, including prescribing medicine to his family after his license was suspended. The following month, David Geier was ultimately fined $10,000 by the Maryland State Board of Physicians for also practicing medicine without a license. In August 2012, Mark Geier's license was formally revoked by the Maryland State Board of Physicians, to which he falsely claimed to be a board-certified geneticist and epidemiologist. His license in Missouri and Illinois were also revoked later that year. On December 21, 2012, Ann Geier, Mark's wife, filed a lawsuit against the Maryland State Board of Physicians for disclosing their private medical information online when they suspended Mark's license. However, the board decision was upheld upon appeal. On April 12, 2013, Mark Geier's last medical license in the United States was revoked by the State Medical Board of Hawaii. Mark lived out the remainder of his years as a self-employed geneticist, operating several organizations from his private address in Maryland, including the Institute for Chronic Illness, which has no website, and the Genetic Centers of America. He operated these organizations along with his son, David Geier. Now, within days of his father's death, David Geier was appointed by RFK Jr. to lead a new HHS study to identify whether there is a relationship between vaccines and autism, despite volumes of data showing the two are not associated. In fact, more than 24 large, rigorous studies have discredited any link between vaccines and autism. David Geier is a man without a medical degree, a discredited researcher, and a vaccine skeptic who was disciplined for practicing medicine without a license. He's a known fraud who has given autistic children a dangerous drug not approved for use in the US and improperly prescribed puberty blockers. All of his so-called scientific papers have been revoked and retracted from scientific journals. The Autistic Self-Advocacy Network said about David Geier's appointment, Anyone who would fleece families with fake cures should not be trusted to interpret a scientific study, let alone conduct one. This move toward conspiracy theories and junk science puts all our lives at risk. They went on to say Kennedy's selection of Geier is a clear indication that the Trump administration plans to rig the upcoming study and claim that it proves vaccines cause autism. This will set public health back decades at a time when vaccine hesitancy and infectious disease are both spreading at alarming rates. And that's the key right there. It's not just about the damage that was done to autistic children that is worrisome. Because of the Geier family, millions of people have doubted the efficacy of vaccines for fear that they would develop autism. And this lie has led to countless people contracting preventable diseases and millions of unnecessary deaths around the world. Despite being thoroughly debunked by the best science, their lies continue to be spread to this day by dishonest actors in powerful positions. And while RFK Jr. continues to deny the efficacy of vaccines, he continues to claim autism is an epidemic and more dangerous than COVID, all based on the conspiracies started by the Geier family. And now David Geier is going to be in charge of researching precisely what he was found to falsely assert without proper credentials and has been fined and charged for his dangerous protocols. The study he leads is estimated to be completed by September 2025, when RFK Jr. has already forecast that it will reveal the cause of autism. He's still convinced autism is caused by an environmental toxin, exactly word for word what was claimed by the Geiers. It's word for word what they were fined for claiming without any justification or medical backing. It's important to remember that scientific discovery is not contingent on deadlines. Conspiracies are. This, along with RFK Jr.'s recent press conference where he spewed lie after lie about autism, as well as the recent announcement about an autism registry, are clear representations that the Trump administration is not interested in the truth about autism. They're only interested in their agenda, which seems eerily similar to Nazi eugenics. The danger is that these people believe autism is a distinct part of us that can be separated from us. But in reality, we are autistic. We don't just have autism like we carry it around in a bag. There's no separating us from the autism. The people like the Geier family treat the autism part as a disease and indiscriminately do whatever they want to destroy what they see as a disease, but all they end up doing is destroying the autistic person. You cannot separate the person from autism. You can destroy the person while trying, but they'll never be the same again. If you remove their autistic brain, they die. If you try to prevent autism, you're killing the fetuses that would be born autistic or castrating people to prevent them from passing along their genes. And that is called eugenics. It's what the Nazis did. It's why Hans Asperger is hated by the autistic community, and it's why RFK Jr. and David Geier need to be stopped. These are scary times we are living in, and it's important we remain vigilant. This is not a time to bury your head in the sand, and it's up to each of us to remain engaged and informed on these events that are likely to impact us all. Stay strong and keep your eyes and ears open. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please comment, like, and subscribe to see more content like this, or click on the video here to continue watching.